what are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right.
Hi, welcome to the Bible Nation podcast. I'm Doug Levesque. Again, joining me today is Pastor Jason Georges from Emmanuel Baptist Church of Corunna, Michigan, mover and shaker here in the state of Michigan, and also Mr. Tony Nash, the owner and operator of AZ Business Solutions, expanding every day, all for your business needs. Congratulations, guys. You're doing great. I'm not sure about myself, but I'm glad you're here.
It's great to be here.
To guide us. Make sure you check us out, BibleNation.org. Tons of articles, resources, and of course, that's where you'll find our podcast. We're on YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find us. So we want to hear back from you, BibleNation.org. Remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven, and it works every single time. And that's what we're about. We're not about just going against evil or trying to promote our agenda. We're trying to really define how the Bible would outline the best culture. And we see that not only from the Bible, but we see it from history, and it's proven. And that's kind of where our framework of conversation goes today. Today we thought we would talk about everything that's going on with Disney, Walt Disney World. I titled this podcast, Trouble in Paradise, right?
It's not your grandpa's Disney anymore.
Right, it's not your grandpa's mouse. And so fellas, I'm going to let you know what's going on. You define the problem, and then we'll go to some of these articles. You define what's going on. Tell us what's going on with Disney.
You want to start?
Crickets?
Well, I know. Well, you know, Disney's always a topic because we both have children in the home still, young children. I got one graduating from college, but then I also have a 6-year-old right now. So
that's family planning at
right.
its finest.
Oh yeah, at its
right
best.
there.
That's only the Lord can do that.
Is that how that works out of San Antonio, Texas?
Yes, that's how we do it.
That's the Texas
how
one.
we do
Everything's
it.
bigger in Texas.
No, the Lord just knew I didn't need any. I need less of my life unattached from kids. So if you have kids, Disney,
it's a thing.
It's right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm convinced when these kids are born, something at the hospital they inject in them that tells them that McDonald's is good, and they want to watch Disney,
Right.
or go to Disney World because you might never tell that to a kid, but they
Right.
seem to know those things,
Yeah.
which just tells us of the power of the culture and media and marketing and messaging.
Yeah.
That even the most consecrated of parents have these influences that are getting into their children's eyes, and of course, Disney is the masters of storytelling.
Right.
And stories are a powerful way to communicate ideas, to create culture. And for decades, Disney has been trusted. They have been the gold standard, right? I mean, a lot of times, even amongst conservative Christians, we would say, now listen, we don't watch any bad movies, but we'll watch a Disney movie.
Right.
And that has kind of always been the standard. Like Disney has even been better than G. Right? You know, even better than rated G, Disney. And wholesome stories. I mean, this is the Disney that made the Alamo and Davy Crockett and some of these other. But there's always been a not Christian layer to Disney.
Right.
And so even at its very beginnings, you know, so there's been Bible advocates, and I'm talking about conservative Bible advocates, have been sounding the alarm of the trend of Disney for decades. I mean, we remember we were the old fogies that were like, you know, when we were concerned about genies and witchcraft and sorcery and magic.
Which the Bible clearly says.
Right.
Don't practice witchcraft. And
of course, you know, the pastor is often, as he ought to be, we're playing the role of the prophet, finds himself standing alone against a congregation of people saying, well, what's the big deal?
Right.
Or we're being too sensitive to this. You know, and so you entertain a little leaven, and a little leaven leavens the whole lump.
Right.
And that's what the Bible says. That's not what we say. Right. And so we've been sounding the warning signs. And now, as culture has continued to move away from God, this has emboldened Disney to for the flowers of what's in it to flourish.
Right.
And now, you know, it's mirroring culture. And so now, beyond sorcery, beyond witchcraft, which are evils, but every parent felt like, well, I can at least say that's a witch. We don't believe in witches.
Right.
Now Disney is telling stories that are very identifiable to not an adult, to a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
To my 6-year-old daughter.
So at least they used to have, here's the princess, and she's very feminine, and here's the prince, and he's kind of the savior or whatever. And so they had gender roles down, and, you know, there was no overt sexuality. There was two faces coming together, almost kissing, and then the camera goes up and there's birds and there's music or whatever. Yeah. And so it was like this trusted thing, and it was wholesome or whatever. And then that turned into wholesale feminism. You know, the girl can do anything the boy can do, sort of thing. And so she's Mulan, she's a warrior, you know, whatever, and, you know, ad infinitum to that.
Yeah, every movie has to have the
right.
girl power
And
theme.
then if there's a preacher, he's a bumbling idiot. If there's a dad, he's a bumbling idiot. And rebellion against authority started to come in there, you know, quite a bit. And so these are things, you know, it's funny because like in the Christian realm with pastors and stuff, they'll say, well, I'm not going to go to that camp because that camp has these questionable preachers, and I don't want our teenagers kind of becoming fans of these questionable evangelists or whatever, these popular evangelists. And so that's very understood in churches about I'm going to go to this camp or that camp, and the influences or whatever. And yet everybody across the board is, you know, we're all watching Disney. Guilty.
And going to Disney.
And going to Disney.
And investing money in Disney. And we just bought into Disney.
If nothing else, the T-shirts, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and when you see these themes throughout, it's not just here and there, but in every movie, these themes that you just talked about with the way they caricature everybody and the way that they kind of stereotype these different people. And you see it happen over and over. Then you start to say, okay, well, that's intentional. That wasn't just part of that story, or that didn't just happen to be. There's an agenda. And then you see with what's happening now with Florida and with this whole don't say gay thing, you see that this agenda is coming to the forefront. You're seeing that there is a actual agenda here, and they're trying to control the way
from the
that young people think.
Quasi, you know, Christianity was just moot inside of the Disney realm. It's like we're not going to go against it, but we're just it's not going to be in our fantasy world. There's not going to be Christianity and church in our fantasy world. It's going to be all these other things. There's spirituality, but it's different, et cetera, et cetera. Even if it's a magic flower or something, you know, that's benign. And so the no Christianity thing, you know, started to have these overtones of rebellion within family and authority structures, feminism, and then I know when I was coming up, multiculturalism. And so, you know, Disney was too white. And so we were going to put every other thing in there, okay, which is fine because we want the little black girls and the little Arab boys all to have their heroines or heroes or something like that. You know, that's fine. But in the multiculturalism, you know, the white man is the problem. Again, you know, and so you're kind of playing into this victimization.
They've not just bought into that thought, but they're actually perpetuating it. They're actually pushing it.
Right, and they actually kind of before it becomes big, like Disney's, you know, planting the seed, and so kids are coming out, you know, going into high school ready for the elements. And then, of course, the music, the Disney music is incredible, isn't it? And so the actors that are the voices and the musicians that are doing this, they're usually preceding the culture with their morality or their immorality. And then whatever the Disney song is ends up being tops on the charts. Yeah. So everyone's toe tapping to it. It's in every nursery. It's in every high school. It's in every car on the way to work, right? And we're all kind of singing this feminism, multiculturalism, rebellion, or whatever. I mean, Frozen is, you know, let it go. Let what go? Let
from the
gender roles,
6-year-old to the 60-year-old.
Be who you are. Be who you are.
I mean, and we could, if we just talked music, Disney music, you know.
Well, when I was growing up, the music was like, look for the bare necessities, like the Blue the Bear singing a kid's song, and now it's popular artists writing and composing music specifically for this story, and the song goes along with it, and like you said, it hits the charts.
But even the old ones like Blue stuff, that was a hippie culture.
Sure.
Like, you know, let's we don't need all this structure, man. You know, we don't need the government. Let's have
I
the
never
bare
picked up on that, but you're right.
No, it's always been, you know, that
you just ruined Jungle Book for me. Thanks.
The one good
my
show.
My favorite cartoon, The Jungle Book.
Well, and then so ultimately we're talking about the stuff that, like, you know, Disney's in the news today, but not for the obvious.
Yeah.
And so we're just being the bad guys, and we're just saying, hey, let's look at the obvious. This stuff's been going, you know, like, you know, why are we in this situation where we've got transgender transvestites reading children's books in libraries and now have education things? Why is it? Well, because way back when we were going to get away with distinctions between men and women in Disney cartoons, you know, in the 60s.
In the 2000s, all the major TV networks came out with their LGBTQ ratings.
Yeah.
This was shortly after Ellen DeGeneres got canceled. And then there was a big uplash for that. And then they came out with it. All of the major networks had to meet, this was around 2003, 2004, a certain LGBTQ rating in order for that show to be able to. So I think at the beginning it was like at least 3 to 5% of your programming has to include some sort of LGBTQ.
Character.
So it was very minimal, but it needed to be in there to be friendly to the community. And we've seen over the last 20 years that it's not just become a small part of it, but you can't hardly find a TV show or a movie where it's not just that they include a character, but that character is always the character that pulls on your heartstrings, that you empathize with. And that
you laugh at, you cry with, you feel sorry for, whatever you empathize with.
So, and it plays on emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, so the danger of Disney is what has to be, the power of Disney has to be recognized is the aspects of our humanity that God has created that they pull on. They touch on the spiritual, they touch on the emotional, but all of these untethered from the Word of God are, our heart is desperately wicked. Who can know it? That's what the Bible warns us of allowing these weaker parts of ourselves or these fluid part of ourselves, these things that are so based in circumstantial things, to not be detached from the solid foundation of the Word of God.
So then Disney, over the decades, with its growing agenda, with its growing power, could be said to be the Sunday school of the LGBTQ agenda. It's preaching. It's preaching, and it's establishing this ideal. Right. So that's the obvious that nobody wants to talk about, that even only the hard noses of preachers will kind of bring in there. But at the same time, they are now reaping what they've sowed.
Yeah.
I mean, they've sowed to the whirlwind, and now they're getting it back. It's not like everyone who now is against Disney is great or good or virtuous or whatever. They might be hypocritical in that they're going against Disney politically, but they're going to Disneyland this summer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so they don't see any problem with that, because that's the kind of culture that we live in. But the second part of this podcast is not just Disney the obvious, it's Disney the obstinate, in that they have aligned themselves, and they're just a magnet. I mean, they've created this, with Sunday school, they've created this church of LGBTQ fantasy world where everything's rainbows and unicorns. And I mean, that's not reality. And so now they're bumping up against it. And there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not giving a dime to Disney. I'm not going to Disney. We're done with Disney. Even Orlando. Yeah. Even Orlando is not defending Disney.
Right.
They're like, these guys have gotten it to where they've gotten power. And so evidently they were given special tax status. So they're not really covering the bill. Floridians and Orlandans are flipping the tax bill for some of this, because look, you get easy flights, it's cheap, that sort of thing. But that's coming out of the pockets of taxpayers and not out of Disney's profits, And then not only that, but they had special governing status. And so they had so much space and so many people and so much special situations that they are allowed to be their own governing entity. So they really are Disney World. They're another world, and they have all this special status, and they get so much power that no local politician or judge or court is really going to mess with the steamroller that is Disney. And so Disney gets puffed up, and what happens then? They think they're going to manipulate DeSantis.
Right.
And I think DeSantis is using the governorship as a bully pulpit now because of that, and to the chagrin
he's become they.
Of many of us, yeah.
In a lot of aspects, he's become they.
Wasn't he a Navy SEAL of some officer?
He's in the military, Marine.
Yeah. So,
he's almost like, if there's not to invoke Hollywood here, but he's almost a Jack Ryan type of character a little bit. Yeah. This guy,
Rambo.
Marine service, but now he's, and I don't want to divert us too much, but what was the instrument of this authority was a special tax district.
Yes.
Which our audience needs to remember. Yeah. I mean, taxes are the definition of power.
Sure.
So this is why we're for low taxes. Why? Because we're for a limited power, limited authority. And so they had this special tax district, which would then gave them this autonomy in the midst of Florida. And basically DeSantis has come out and said, Florida is not going to be governed or be pushed around by California corporate executives.
Right.
So their policy and ideology is not coming and leading Florida. It's the other way around.
Right.
I mean, they are in our state, which is a right perspective of statehood.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, Orlando police could still come to Disney, but they had to stop at the front gate and ask for the Disney security people.
Right.
The Disney security people were their own police department. You know what I mean?
Themselves.
Yeah, and so they had the equivalent of their own mayor and governor, not just the manager, so to speak. And so
The Wild Wild West.
right, and so it came to the point where when people said we got to challenge them in court. It's like, how can we challenge them in court? They're unchallengeable. And so DeSantis has done that. And so here's the articles coming from around the world, Daily Mail. Florida House votes 68-38 to strip Disney of privilege tax and self-governing status. Woke conglomerate pays the price for publicly bashing Governor Ron DeSantis. Don't say gay bill. So Daily Mail is showing what side they're on.
Right.
Which that "Don't Say Gay Bill" moniker is totally
False.
propaganda.
It's not what it's called.
It's not what it is. It's
No.
It's just
It's basically third grade and below. We're not going to teach sex ed, period.
Right.
We're
Exactly.
certainly not going to teach homosexuality.
Why
in
talk to
third grade.
children about sex
But
at all?
I'm just like, what about fourth, fifth, and sixth grade?
Right.
I mean, I was like, this is such a benign thing.
Right.
and at the core of that,
Yeah.
this is the wrong that DeSantis made, his error, right, in the woke perspective. Like, that conversation needs to be left to parents.
Period.
He hasn't even said which
Right.
way that conversation should go.
Right.
Well, and
He's just saying, as public school educators, we're not going to have that conversation. We're gonna let the parents have that conversation, which is this answer.
But I'm saying, like, Florida House must be proud of themselves. 68-38.
Yeah.
We voted for. Whoa. Number one, it's too little, too late. Number two, you're talking about protecting third graders, but not fourth graders.
right.
Well,
and
because 10th and 11th graders don't need to be having this conversation.
with anyone but their parents.
The college people don't need to be having that conversation. So
Well, the crazy thing is, it goes back to what we talked about, how the power of Disney perpetuating this culture where this kind of idea that we're going to let people be who they are and talk about what they want, and that teachers can teach us, it's become normal in society.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's odd or strange, or that 37 people would vote for being able to talk about sex to a 3-year-old, it seems so obvious to me that why would you have that conversation with a kid? But yet it's so inundated in the culture and been perpetuated that it's
Disney Sunday school, Disney sentimentality is not just sentimentality, it's a political agenda.
oh yeah,
And so that's where it's come. Here's another article. Florida legislature passes bill repealing Disney special tax status. So the tax status is tied to, but a distinct thing from the fact that it had these special governing powers as well. There were two different things. Here's Yahoo News. Florida ends Disney special status as culture war flares. And so, the media is definitely on the side in poor Disney. CNN, why Disney has its own government in Florida and what happens if that goes away. We're going to lose our Disney Sunday school sentimentality. Florida set to strip Disney of self-governing status in dispute over LGBTQ law. They're acting like the LGBTQs have a law that's getting undermined, and that's not the case. LGBTQ is outside the law, and they're finally getting, held back. And then in coming against DeSantis politically, DeSantis is fighting back politically. So I think he's a good guy, he's a hero, and all this kind of stuff. But let's make no mistakes, this is political battle. Last one is Disney stock tumbles amid Florida bill controversy. So not only is their stock tumble, but all of a sudden they're discounting prices because people are changing when they're realizing what my grandkid, and they're coming up, and so Disney has kicked the hornet's nest. And we're yet to see where that lands or where they land.
Isn't it amazing? Just as you read through just the headlines of 6 different news outlets and the names, how different each one. It's like there is no news anymore. People are they're gonna persuade how you think about this just in the headline. We're not gonna just report it. We're gonna tell you what you should think about it. And it's amazing. It's the same story. And 6 different provocative headlines.
6 paragraphs can be as little as 6 sentences.
Yeah.
And there's not all the issues in there. And so I think these journalists are not that smart. I think there's a head guy, a manager of the paper, who works the headline that leans it towards an agenda of the day, but everybody else has to sign together and just
I
put
read
some
Well,
I read
this. Go ahead.
I read a statistic the other day on social media. People that come across these articles on social media, 93% only read the headline.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
They don't even look at the story.
Right.
Whatever the headline, that's now their thought, whatever that headline was. So the power of headlines.
Yeah, but DeSantis is trying to kill Disney. That's what they kind of see.
There's people that think DeSantis is trying to make people in the whole state of Florida not be allowed to say the word gay.
And I love the fact that the Democrats, who are socialist, in other words, big government, in your face, we want to control medicine, education, religion, all this kind of stuff, are now accusing DeSantis of being a communist and controlling big corporations. That's the accusation. Yeah, they're accusing DeSantis of what they do.
Right.
And that's part of their agenda.
That's doublespeak.
Yeah, that's doublespeak.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know.
Right.
Now I don't know to what extent it's true. I don't think it's true, but yeah, I just think it's funny that that's now what the thing is. So you know, how do we salvage Disney? What should Disney do to salvage itself?
What should Disney do to salvage? That's a loaded question.
Okay, so no, they're saying about Iger might come back as the new CEO. I mean, they're topsy-turvy, inside, outside, upside down, California, Florida. I mean, it's going every which way.
I mean, maybe try to get in touch with the average American person. What they're doing, they're appealing to such a minority, and they're catering to such a minority, and so they're turning off a large percentage of their just from a business perspective. They're turning away a huge percentage of their customer base.
They own ABC, which is as liberal as anything. ESPN is so politicized. You know, it might be good now to make the next Disney movie about John Wayne. Let's have John Wayne Disney series. Seriously, John Wayne Disney.
But let him be a toxic male.
Let him be a toxic male.
Let him have some toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And let him pray.
Yeah.
Let us pray. Right.
You got the part.
You got it. It's you. We're gonna cast you. No. I mean, the fix to Disney is to clean house on its board.
Yeah.
Because the board is the way these large corporations are now run. Is the board needs to be formulated as a cross section of different industries and cultural aspects, and of course now there are board quotas of minorities and of females and then now LGBTQ identifiers that have to be represented on this board. And so the only solution to Disney is to fix the board.
Depoliticize the board and say, look, we're going to be apolitical here.
Yeah,
now,
why
that doesn't mean that they won't be multicultural, but they need to be apolitical and you know, look at the bottom line. Like, what are we going to do to win back, you know, people? So, you know, an apolitical situation. And then just get rid of the whole idea of child sexuality.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just say we are not going to have any child sexuality. We're not going to have any portrayals. We're not going to deal with these issues, period. Right. You know, we'll deal with the fantasy horse that turns into a monkey or whatever, but we're not going to deal with, you know, sexuality. Those are just two simple things before I'm going to, you know, watch my next Disney film or sing Frozen in the shower.
But it all stems from what their core ideology and belief of what the family and what society.
I'm not saying they'll do it.
Should look like. Though.
Yeah.
No, that.
Yeah. I mean, that's just practical speaking.
But we also make the mistake to think that Disney simply got caught up in the culture and they're doing the right business decision. Yeah. No, they are the mover of culture.
They're perpetuating the culture.
They are the instrument. Yeah. They are the tool here.
And you got ABC, ESPN, Disney, National Geographic, Pixar, and now they got Star Wars. They've got the Marvel Universe. They've got these things. They're basically the only choice on the table is Disney.
Right.
That's a lot of power.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know, diversify.
And they're controlling the minds and imaginations of every generation.
Their books and coloring books and things are ending up in the schools. So in any school in America today, you're going to go. There's going to be a Disney something.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what does every male in America do? They have some sport that they watch.
Well, and
from golf to football, whatever. Yeah. And there's going to be the Disney politicization in there as well.
Well, and the problem is the one voice that should stand against this is the church.
Yeah.
But instead of speaking up, we've decided to be Disney. Mm-hmm. So the church has gone Disney. Mm-hmm. And so we go on the back of Disney. In other words, there's this grand competing influence that we've thrown up our hands and said, we can't compete with that influence. Right. So therefore, if you can't beat them, join them. Mm-hmm. And that's been the mentality of churches, to join them. And so they lose their moral authority, their moral high ground to speak against Disney because they're doing they operate the exact same way.
Yes.
The exact same way. And so that needs to happen.
It really is time to unleash pastors and give you permission and really say, you know what, you need to have a Disney sermon. There needs to be a Disney Sunday. There needs to be a Disney sermon where, you know, you're not mandating things to your church family, but you're saying it how it is.
Helping them understand.
And you are saying, I myself am going to boycott, you know, for a certain amount of time until this, and this happens. You know, depoliticize, desexualize, and have a portrayal of Christianity that's not neutral or stupid or, you know, whatever it is that you want to do. And the church needs to be unleashed about this, and then look at yourself as to what extent is your calendar and budget and processes mirror Disney in regards to what are you doing for Sunday school, you know, cantatas, you know, sort of thing. You know, I mean, when you look at a lot of our Christian colleges and the music they're producing and stuff like that, they're going for a Hollywood musical, you know, sort of thing. And to what extent does that need to be altered, you know, revisited or whatever, so that we're not reflecting in a mirror of that culture? We're actually setting the tone for that culture.
It's so deep into the culture, but you know, I mean, and certainly like anything Hollywood, even most of the major companies that we would eat at, visit, there's nothing, you know, moral about them. And matter of fact, if we got deep into the intentions or who owns these companies, we probably wouldn't. And so, you know, like you said, either it's not about mandating people what they should or shouldn't do, but at least be aware of what you're putting in front of you and in front of your kids. Understand that this isn't by chance. There is an agenda. It has influenced culture more than anything. And so you need to be aware of these things and understand what it is.
In the 80s with, you know, Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority, they used boycott. They used election integrity. They went after these issues, and that's what ushered in the Reagan era, where conservatives had the White House, they had the legislature, and they had the judiciary. Now, they still didn't manage to overturn abortion. They still didn't manage to stop sexualization of society, et cetera, but it was because church Christian moral majority people did step up and say boycott. Now, it was about the end of the 80s then that people, even Christians, started saying, oh, no, we just can't boycott. It's, you know, it's just laissez-faire, and they quit doing that. So it did work. You know, it can work if money's someone's God and you put your thumb on that. You know, you can change their perspective or direction practically or whatever, but maybe not their heart. So we got to change our behavior. We got to change our speech, and we have to be able to separate ourselves and have our voice be heard if it's possible.
It's important to understand that boycotting is not cancel culture,
right?
Because that's what people will accuse. Well, you're just cancel culture. You know, we don't like cancel culture, and then so they say when we boycott something, well, what's the difference between you and cancel culture? Right. And cancel culture is saying they need to be taken off the air. And
cancel culture is a lie.
Exactly.
Cancel culture is bullying. Cancel culture is skipping the courts and, you know, claiming libel and slander, you know, in the press, true or not true.
Right.
And so it's bullying. It's baloney.
Right.
Is what it is. Cancel culture is baloney. So I don't even want to say those words because
Sure.
it's so stupid.
But cancel culture is you making a decision for me.
Yeah.
That's tyranny.
Right.
Liberty is me making my mind.
That's the difference.
Making
Boycotting is I'm saying I'm not supporting it.
Right.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's it.
I'm
not
gonna
supporting
do this.
it.
I can't do it with a clear conscience.
Right.
If you want to join me, let's sign a letter together to Disney or whatever. You know, dear Disney, we've enjoyed your programming in the past. We'd like to in the future, but it's not about.
Please make a John Wayne movie.
Please don't take the mouse away from us.
Please make a John Wayne movie.
Please make
starring
a John Wayne
Doug
movie.
Levesque.
Right.
Yeah, so we get it. Yeah. So, anyways, well, you know, I think the Bible talks about, in closing here, the Bible talks about casting down imaginations, and I assume that means bad imaginations that don't include God, and bringing into captivity, control, every thought. And so, you know, why do we have a rampant organization like Disney that really gets on the cusp of being evil and having to be reined in and having a huge culture war with something like that? Why does that happen? Because really we're not doing what the Bible says in our imaginations. You know, it's okay. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a talking mouse or a talking animal. You know, the Bible has Balaam, you know, talking.
Right.
But that could, you know, a talking snake, you know, is a bad thing as well. And so, you know, I think even with that, we have to be careful, even in our Sunday school literature and stuff like that we talk about. But if we run rampant with fiction and fantasy and horror and science fiction always precedes bad science. so it's not just a Disney issue. It's the Christian being under scriptural self-control, or spirit control, executing themselves properly. And when we start to let ourselves go, we're giving something else power in our own mind and heart.
Well, fiction is the original virtual. Right. And the allure of fiction and virtual is the loophole of finding a domain in which God is not king.
Right.
Which his word has no authority.
Right.
And so that's the allure of fiction.
Yeah.
Because everyone's, well, it's not real. So I can construct a world that is without God and without God's parameters and without God's morality. So now I can have a new morality. Yeah. And we understand this because everyone, if you've watched one Star Wars movie, you understand the rules of that world, even though we don't live in that world.
Right.
And a rational, sane human being will say, I know that's not real. But you understand those rules, and you understand that ethic. And now with the virtual fiction, and then science fiction, which becomes reality, right? But now with the virtual, you have the melding so that the real and the virtual are indistinguishable.
Right.
And what are we looking for? We are looking for a place other than God, outside of God, where his jurisdiction is not there. But this is what the Bible believer, the Bible advocate, needs to understand. Now, the whole world needs to understand this, but who are we really talking to right now? You need to understand that God is God of this world. He is the God of the heavens. He's God of the earth. But that God is also the God of your imagination. And so even in the virtual world of Disney, the virtual world of a fiction novel,
metaverse,
or even in the virtual world of a video game or Meta, or wherever, if you are there, God has authority there, and your presence there is still under God's jurisdiction. And so, the psalmist said, Psalm 101, verse 2, I will behave myself wisely in a perfect way. Oh, when wilt thou come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. I mean, there's the ethic.
Yeah, and so, God does hate some things. And our sentiment should be with God, and that, Lord, I'm going to be against what you're against. I'm going to stand against you. And that's myself, not just pointing at someone else, but I'm going to be against it in my own self.
Right.
This idea of I can be in this fantasy world and, swirl my lightsaber and stuff like that. That appeals to me, right? Being a space samurai or whatever it is, But we have to bring it back into reality. And the church is so far removed from that. And so it's no wonder that there's trouble in paradise, that Disney's troubled. They've created a world, or you go in there and there's multiple worlds, and none of them include Jesus. Jesus is nothing but a myth, and therefore his rule, his law, you don't even need salvation. You don't even need salvation because you're not a sinner there, And so that's always going to end up where it's ended up. It's always going to end up in trouble.
Right.
Even if DeSantis is less than perfectly pure in his going against them, that's where they've put themselves. And so, I have no angst against Walt Disney personally, except he never multiplied worship to anybody but himself.
And he could have.
Disney worship.
And he could have.
What a tool.
He could have had that sort of influence. So, listen, a Bible culture is the best culture. We ought to be unapologetic about it. We ought to make it appealing. We ought to make it fun to some extent. But that means also that we have our own identity and we take our own stance. And so I commend Florida, the legislature, DeSantis, for taking these certain views, whatever they are. And I hope that Disney takes a turn, like you said, in a better direction to where my own grandkids can watch a Disney film. Because right now, it's like, what can you watch, what can you not watch? It's just pick and choose. And of course, Disney's everywhere, 360 degrees. And so we're going to have to end up being the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, the Bible says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. So when you are living in a Bible culture, that's you understand that the devil he's walking around seeking who he may devour. He wants to devour Christians. He can't take our salvation, but he wants to destroy a Christian's life. Yeah. And so when you're just kind of blindly walking through life, not understanding that there is an adversary and he's stalking me and he's looking to prey on me, then you just start to kind of accept things and you kind of become numb to it. And he's
subtle.
You become numb to it. And so we talk about this stuff because we realize that this stuff that's happening, this culture that's being prepared, it's part of the adversary. Yeah. It's part of his plan.
It's a magic kingdom. It's not God's kingdom.
Yes.
I remember preachers in the 70s preaching because The Wonderful World of Disney came out on Sunday nights, and people were skipping Sunday night church to stay home and watch Wonderful World of Disney.
There was no DVR then.
And there was no DVR. You had to stay home.
No
and watch.
VHS or anything.
Yeah, and that was a big excuse. And that was before Sunday Night Football, even. So the devil does have an agenda, and it's subtle. And so we
see that, and we see that the devil is in all these things, and that's why we talk about him, because it's not just a coincidence. These things are intentional, and so as a Christian, if you're going to participate in these things, you need to be aware that that he's coming after you.
Well, and let me also say to our pastor brethren, you might be listening to this going, man, these guys, that's the argument we were having 20 years ago. And I would say, listen, you do as the Lord commands you to do. But I wouldn't be the guy throwing cold water on conversations of separation and holiness.
Right.
I would don't. It's one thing to not if you don't have whatever to have that conversation. But what's worse is when the brethren come and kick the legs out from underneath those who are trying to have that conversation, because that's even worse. Yeah, that's even worse. And listen, I mean, I'll say it. I mean, God will judge you. Yeah, God will judge you for that kind of attitude of like being dismissive of it. If you're not willing to have the conversation, then don't have it. Yeah. But to go and undermine a conversation that has to happen, that needs to happen. Yeah. The fact that it's not happening more often is indicative of as where our culture is right now. Don't be the one. In other words, stop trying to be cool in the world's eyes.
And I would say, pastors, we love you. We're not against you. You have your own jurisdiction, but so many of us have become soft in these cultural areas. And what you tolerate, your kids will accept and your grandkids will celebrate.
Right.
And so, maybe your role has to be a little more curmudgeon, even in regards of Disney.
Someone has to.
Yeah. Someone's got to remember the good old days and talk about them.
So thanks again for being with us here during our podcast. We'd like to hear from you. What do you think about this Disney issue? What side are you on? What are some of the answers or suggestions that you would have or that you've practiced in regards to your family's relationship with Disney? And remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven and it works.